Conference will now be recorded.
Right. Not seeing any hands, we'll go ahead and move on to the approval of the August 20th, 2025 meeting minutes. Do we have any comments or edits to the meeting minutes? Find those in your packet. I'm not seeing any hands in the room and not seeing anything online. I can get a motion to approve the August 20th meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the August 20th meeting minutes. Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, we will go ahead and approve those meeting minutes. And we'll go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. So we have the 2050 RTP amendment. And we're looking for a motion to approve that. And does anyone have any questions or concerns? I think that was in your packet. If there are no questions, we can entertain a motion to approve that.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and approve the consent agenda, the 2050 RTP amendment. All right, we're back on time. Good job, everyone. We'll move to our update from the RAC. So Tom is with us. And Tom, do you want to go ahead and give the update? We're not hearing you if you're talking. So.
Well, sorry, the button's in a different place. Go to meeting here. Here I am. So it looks like you guys are sharing the slide deck, which I appreciate. So I just want to give our usual report on what we're doing. We're really focused on our control strategy blueprint. So on the next slide, I'm just going to give an overview of our effort through our September 5th version. We released it at the end of August for review and discussion at our board meeting on September 5th. So that's the live version we're working with, and we're really now in a, asking folks for review and comment. So I'll identify some milestones that if you folks are interested, any of you folks are interested, we would appreciate your review and comment. On the next slide then, this is what's in the blueprint at this point. Some of this is not new. It's been in each earlier version. We offer these contextual information that's under that second major bullet, the RAC, the public input, what our air quality problem is with respect to ozone, and then a little bit about the emissions causing ozone. Then in the emission control strategies, which is the bulk of the document, we line out what the division is proposing for regulatory changes, actual regulations that will be adopted with the SIP at the November AQCC rulemaking. And then we move into our concepts for strategies and timing and that sort of thing, and offer summaries and overview links for all of those. And then we have a description of kind of how the stakeholder review process will work. And then we have a section we'd added, for this September 5th version that lines out the RAC board process. So at the very top of the slide are the draft recommendations. These are new in this September 5th version, so I will walk you all through those a little bit later in this talk. On the next slide then, again, just a reminder of our timeline. Here we are in the middle of September, and we've held a couple of workshops. Appreciate those of you all that were able to attend in Fort Collins. And now we're deep into the process of the control strategy committee met today, our indirect source work group met yesterday, and the And the board is really going to start to take over the review process, starting with the October 3rd version that we'll put out at the end of this month. And because we're headed towards a board endorsement, possibly as soon as October, but more likely at their early November meeting. And then what they endorse, we will provide an informational presentation at the AQCC rulemaking for the ozone plan in mid-November. So we're well along in this somewhat accelerated process. So on the next slide then, we've developed more information about how commenters and reviewers are engaging and how we're trying to reach out. So I'll list some of that out on the next slide then. So a lot of information on this slide, but just kind of a complete listing of what's happening. The left side are the 2 workshops in July and August. All the materials are available, including a summary of kind of the takeaways, what we call the group memory from those meetings. And we have a direct link to the Blueprint landing page. We've got a comments on, process for the September 5th draft version. The key date on this left side is September 19th, so the end of this week. For whatever comments, any comments are welcome with respect to this version of the blueprint. And this is a key time to do this because really, as I said, after the October 3rd board meeting, we'll be more principally focused on what the board would like added or changed. And then the right side is just a list of all the meetings that the RAC is sponsoring or involved in. And so I won't read you all those dates, but it's all kind of sequential. Then on the next slide, we're pretty far along on supplemental documents. We've really made a lot of progress in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We now have briefing papers for the 23 individual control strategy concepts. Some of those concepts are an initial assessment step, and then in a subsequent time frame, an adoption and implementation step. So those each count as an individual strategy, but we have briefing papers that cover almost all of them. And by the time of the October 3rd version, we will have all 23 documented. So again, you can, if you have this presentation after the meeting, you can go right to that web page. We're going to make additional updates, as it says there. We're really beefing up this engagement information document, including the content of of individual review comments that we receive. And then an interesting development that happened in September is the board, our chair, Dan Kramer, developed a policy for the development of the blueprint, and it was approved by the board at the meeting. It's a guide to our overall process and especially clearly outlines the board roles. So if you're interested in that kind of process stuff, you might want to look at that. And then again, each briefing paper, these are the factors that we're considering. So this has remained pretty constant, and I think this is pretty solid. On the next slide, here's a little more information about this engagement information. There's a slide from the Fort Collins workshop, a photo from the Fort Collins workshop. This lists out some of the statistics for July and August. We got 16 individual sets of written comments. We've had more discussions with our work group and committee. And then we've had engagement on some of these specific strategies for quite a long period, including with the board. So we're building on those more detailed discussions that occurred in that 9 or 12 months preceding. We've had a good cross-section of different kinds of entities and organizations: local, state government, transportation organizations and agencies, industry and trade groups, environmental and health organizations, and more. So you can actually see that on the breakouts of the individual workshops. Then on the next slide, this is an important slide to focus on if you're interested in making comments. So we are trying to offer practical things that you could comment on here. So that's what I'm going to go through at a high level here. Remember, this is a set of strategies. It's a framework. It's longer term kind of plan. What's the goal of a strategy? What's the time frame? What are the options for implementation? And what are the evaluation criteria, documentation? What does that tell you? So those are the kind of things that we hope to capture and get comment on. Is that what's in that first bullet? And then we offer next in the remainder of the slide some of the examples of details that you may want to take into account when you comment. Like what kind of data should a program that's described in this blueprint gather? What is it, an initial set of data followed by additional supplemental information later? What should be considered in this two-step process that we've outlined for a number of the strategies, where we make an assessment followed by an implementation step later. If there is a phased approach for a strategy, should the first phase be voluntary and the second one regulatory, or both voluntary? We're looking for that kind of feedback. And we'd like to hear about who's eligible and required to participate in a voluntary or regulatory program. We're interested in making sure that there's good equity in terms of who needs to be involved. There's different kinds of, as an example, different kinds of folks operate landscape maintenance equipment. So right now the regulation, focuses on government activities there, and then there may be a regulation from the division, later in the near future that goes into the possible private sector. Does it also include individual homeowners? So it's complicated to do that and make sure that we're addressing all those emissions, but treating everyone in an equitable fashion. We have strategies that are some of them are federally enforceable if they're submitted with the SIP, and that's a high bar, and because EPA has to sign off and be willing to do that. And of course, we have a lot of state-only strategies that the state has adopted on many sources. So we'd like to hear more about that. We'd like to hear a lot about the need for financial incentives and technical assistance that could be provided to drive emission reductions without prescriptive regulations. We're certainly not only interested in having a strategic plan about prescription, but also about voluntary incentives. And then some things need to be tracked and reported. So what are suggestions or comments you all have about the entity or entities that would do that? And then for those of you that are used to reporting data to the Air Pollution Control Division or other agencies, there's a lot of this reporting to state and federal agencies. So give us feedback on what some of that reporting format might look like. Then on the next slide, I just want to touch on these draft recommendations, which are new in the September 5th version of the blueprint. So on the next slide, we have one primary recommendation to date. This is exactly the primary recommendation that is the goal of the board's blueprint policy. So we're exactly aligned on that. And the key thing here is that achieving attainment, means two things. We have to measure attainment, and we have to have a modeled demonstration of the 70 ppb standard for that same time frame. So the strategic plan is to have emission reduction policies implemented by 2030 so that those can be accounted for both in terms of measuring cleaner air, but also allowing the model to predict that we will reach that standard by 2032. Then there's a number of secondary ones that are a little more detailed, starting on the next slide. I'm not going to read you every word. There's a lot of words, but you can take a look at this. And so we talk about the need for planning and tracking and being timely and coordinated, with groups like the North Front Range MPO TAC, like with the Dr. Cog TAC. The state agencies who are involved, transportation, energy, APCD. So we're looking to more closely align and have a regular process in place to develop these strategies and do further analysis. State agencies often bear the burden of many of the implementation efforts, and that takes staffing, analysis costs, computing needs, and just like every type of government, the state agencies are resource constrained. So we're going to be asking them to help us do a good job on strategy planning by, forecasting what their needs are. Colorado state government has a broad mandate, both statutorily and from the executive branch, to integrate a lot of different kinds of planning and analysis. And we'd like to make sure that these strategies reflect the collective state government approach. So there's a number of factors and data that need to be considered. Each independent state agency is generating its own program ideas, and there's all kinds of things ranging from housing development and density and transit planning and transportation planning like you all do, the climate mitigation, adaptation, resilience goals. So there's a lot there that we'd like to hear to gain the collaboration and coordination across all of Colorado state government. Then one more slide on the secondary. So we're also going to look outward and check in with other states and regions where they're experiencing ozone issues that are similar to ours. We started collaborations with Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Wasatch Front areas because they are faced with some of the same problems and have done some interesting work on strategies and ozone analysis. I mentioned briefly this idea of the equity about involving all the groups and parties that need to be involved in looking at a strategy and making a collective understanding of how the applicability would work, so that we don't strategy doesn't focus out of proportion on one fraction of those that cause the emissions. Resources and financial support are very important. We got that funding at the RAC to expand our voluntary incentive programs to the Larimer and Weld counties, and so we're super excited about that. But we need to keep looking for those opportunities, identify things like the enterprise efforts to bring resources to solve emissions problems, to reduce emissions. And so we'd like to hear about ideas to and hope to include more information about the strategic approach on addressing those problems. We need to do more research on a couple of key topics that we're going to have ready by early next year. We'll have a kind of an effects of ozone study, health effects that we've already and are still experiencing those effects, all of us who breathe. And then we have a modeling results where we can evaluate the changes from these potential emission strategies in the blueprint on future ozone levels. And then in line with what the board adopted in their policy, we will no doubt be revising the blueprint periodically, starting next year to determine if additional strategies or modifications to the ones that are proposed need to be changed. And let's see if I have one more slide. Oh, yeah, here's my somewhat lighthearted literary one. So, the blueprint is supposed to be kind of a journey to a better place and not have us, running in place as maybe we've been doing over the last few years. So we hope to get all these different characters like the ones you see on the left side. That's a strange cast of characters to be traveling together, but there they are on a way to a better place, in this case, the Emerald City. And, we need to address the kinds of aspects that are called out in The Wizard of Oz, use of our brain, using our heart and our judgment, having the courage to, act and that kind of thing. So we tried this 10 days ago with the board just to have a more lighthearted literary view of maybe what we're doing. So hopefully you all find that enjoyable. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom?
I do have questions. Thanks. Hi, Tom. It's Elizabeth. I know that the blueprint has been getting updated at a fast pace. I wasn't sure, the last time it sounded like before the August 29th deadline that you guys were going to still be looking through the data and getting it posted again to the website. I didn't know what the timing was for getting the new data that was previously removed on the last go round uploaded back to the website. I didn't know if you had more information on the timing of that.
Well, help me understand what you mean by the data.
The data on the background ozone that you guys said it sounded like it needed to be vetted further. And obviously the reason I ask is our Fort Collins Tower is now showing higher levels of background ozone. So I'm interested in understanding when that data is going to be re-released.
Yeah. So there's a couple of parts of that, Elizabeth. One is we found error in our modeling that our contractor had done. So they are redoing that modeling, and those technical results will be available at a forum that we will hold virtually. We do these forums every 3 or 4 months, and so we'll do that at the end of October or early November to go over the revised modeling results and also talk about what people call source apportionment and another tool that allows us to apply factors to estimate the benefits of reducing emissions, because the source apportionment is just a snapshot. And then there's no answer from that about how does that change ozone if you reduced, one type of source versus another. And then we will apply those factors from that technique that's called the decoupled direct method. And in February, we'll produce a longer 15 or 20 page report on what those results show from the strategies that are listed in the blueprint. So what the response in ozone is when you try different combinations of emission reduction. So there's a substantial meeting, probably 3 hours at the end of October, early November, to look at things from a work completed to date. Then we will apply those factors and do another kind of forum with a written report in February.
Okay, so the data you guys won't be using that data to make recommendations for the November rulemaking.
Well, we're not in charge of the rulemaking. That's up to the Air Quality Control Commission. The ozone plan that is being submitted by the division doesn't show that we would reach the ozone standard, so it doesn't do what's called demonstrating attainment. So they're really just doing an administrative adoption of the chapters so that we're in compliance with EPA reporting requirements. And then the state is going to ask for a downgrade to this severe status under the Clean Air Act. And then that's why we're aiming at this 30 through 32 timeframe for the next planning period.
Okay, so the RAC, staff won't be taking recommendations to the RAC board for recommending different strategies than what the state's proposing right now for the November rulemaking.
Yeah, the state has specific regulation changes that they have published for that November rulemaking, along with those administrative ZIP chapters. We're bringing the blueprint, which is a separate thing, more long-term, and we're going to provide an informational presentation to the commission at their November rulemaking. I'd be glad to follow up with you offline if it's hard to do here in real time.
So our next set of comments are due Friday, and then when would be the next opportunity if we need to submit comments to the RAC? Would that just be the next RAC board meeting?
No, it would be in the middle of October. We haven't identified a specific date. We want to see what comes out of the October 3rd board meeting, because we'll be the document will be pretty far along by then, and we'll be trying to respond, but there will be a ability to get comments in by about the middle of October for a November sort of final version. I'm sorry I don't have an exact date for you. I just don't have it. So.
Any other questions for Tom? We'll move on to the Air Pollution Control Division update with Brendan.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
Hi, everyone. The couple updates on hearings from the August AQCC meeting. First of those was the secondary SO2 designation. Here, the commission set a hearing to consider a designation recommendation for EPA's revised secondary SO2 NAC standard. And then the second hearing update is for regulation number 31, the landfill methane regulation. The commission was in consideration for establishing new regulation number 31 to address municipal solid waste for landfill greenhouse gas controls and monitoring requirements. And then in addition to those updates, I wanted to highlight the upcoming October AQCC meeting, which is going to be a joint meeting with the Board of Health. And then some additional highlights from that meeting. There'll be a review of the 2025 ozone season, some monitoring data, and then and then an update separate from that. The Clean Fleet Enterprise is accepting applications for the Clean Fleet Vehicle and Technology Grant Program from September 15th through October 24th. And those are the updates I have.
Any questions for Brendan? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Brendan. We'll move along to our presentations. And I will go ahead and welcome Jacqueline Streeter here from the GoNoCo 34. Give a little bit of context to this. Jacqueline's been giving updates at the Planning Commission meetings and obviously at the 34 Commission and some of our other groups that gather. But I thought it'd be good to bring some information back to this team and some of the staff and our elected officials are all involved in, or a number of elected officials are involved in the TMO, but wanted to get staff connected to some of the work. So happy to be here.
Well, thank you for having me. Ready to go start because I'm in the room.
Yes,
online.
Excellent.
As Nicole said, thank you guys for having me. My name is Jacqueline Streeter. I'm the executive director of the GoNoCo 34 TMO. So I know many of you were involved in the formation of the TMO. So I thank you for that, for allowing us to be in existence. And I'm honored to serve on behalf of our current and future board of directors. Go to the next slide. So we'll go over a little bit of reintroduction. We'll go over some of our wins. We call it our year in review. We just had our board meeting earlier in the month and went over all of our successes. We'll talk about membership very briefly, and then you can get in touch with me if you have questions. So this slide probably looks familiar to a lot of you. As Nicole said, we've been doing like the roadshow around town and reintroducing the TMO. So TMO is a collective effort of community stakeholders. We collaborate in development TDM strategies, transportation management strategies. Our hopes is that we maximize the efficiency of transportation systems that are already in existence, reduce congestion, and lower vehicle emissions. So who are we? Just in case you don't know or you've never heard or been in a room for the presentation. We are proud to be the first TMO in Northern Colorado. Our formation began November of 2024. Consequently, that was my first month of employment with the TMO. We fully launched on Winter Bike to Work Day in Fort Collins in February of 2025. So our mission is very easy. We're dedicated to improving mobility, reducing congestion, and promoting sustainable transportation options along the US 34 corridor, from town of Estes Park to town of Kersey. This photo represents our Bike to Work Day celebration in the afternoon before it torrentially downpoured on us in the city of Greeley with the city of Greeley employees. So just a couple of the services and activities that we offer and perform. We have a governing document called our Service Development Plan that has had board approval this last September. That helps us along the corridor figure out what program prioritization looks like, what activities are included in our membership dues. We've got 3 different buckets: outreach and education, our transportation services, and our regional collaboration. The goal of the TMO is to move regionally, and like I said, from town of Estes Park to town of Kersey. The goal is to move in one regional direction, bringing everybody together through collaboration. Year in review. This is our Bike to Work Day celebration. We were lucky enough to kick off the very first Bike to Work Day US 34 specific celebration at the Centura Mobility Hub. We've been doing a lot of presentations. We've been holding a lot of lunch and learns. This represents the 3 most important initiatives that we have currently through FY 24 and 25. Through TDM programming, we offered 13 educational presentations region-wide. That's from February to present. We had our first annual Bike to Work Day celebration. And we're currently working on our annual commuter survey that will be distributed to our members come October. We also offer ETC education services. We've had 11 tabling events regionally across the corridor, and we've recently kicked off our Commute Ambassador program. Through communications and marketing prior to February, the Go No Go TMO did not exist on social media, so we created a robust communications and marketing plan. We've grown. We have 150 followers across LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We have 117 newsletter subscribers to date. We're on our 3rd volume of our newsletter. TMO operations and membership and sustainable funding. We've had 11 board meetings with up to 15 members in monthly attendance. We've had 40 members and sponsors join our TMO, which we're very grateful for, bringing our total membership and sponsors to 14. We collaborate with the US 34 Coalition, US 34 TAC, and for sustainable funding, we partner with the NFRMPO and CDOT, among other entities that we're looking at to help us stay afloat and continue our mission. I know we've needed to put in an invoice reminder, so if you're a current member of the TMO, invoices are due by the end of this month. So if you have any questions, you can reach out. And this is the work plan that our board just approved at our September meeting. So our work plan is quarterly. We revisit this work plan every quarter to make sure that our project prioritization is in line with the board prioritization. And this is kind of has different buckets: strategic planning, TDM programming, as you saw on the previous 2 slides. This is really important for us to stay laser focused on moving the region forward when it comes to transportation projects, and really keeps us honest. We know exactly where we are and what we're doing, moving from quarter to quarter. The next slide, you'll see our education and services and our continued marketing. We release our Go No Go 34 news every quarter, and we post on Tuesdays and Fridays on our social media channels. So if you've seen us, you want to share our posts, it'd be greatly appreciated, so that we can increase our engagement along our social media channels. And last but not least, TMO operations and membership and sustainable funding. So we're always looking at sustainable funding. I am a part-time executive director, so this project affords 20 hours per week. And we are always looking for increased funding so that we can move up to full-time and maybe get another employee. So it's not just me. Looking at different projects, you know, I can't do everything. So adding some more help would be great. And that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions you have. Thanks for having me again, allowing us space to introduce the TMO and providing an update.
I will just share from a local agency perspective, I know we're probably all going through budget conversations in our various different communities, so just a reminder, if you're in a group that will pay into dues, a good thing to get it in your budget for the next year. And then another thing, you've been great at, we got you connected with the economic development department at the city of Loveland, and we've been able to get connections with folks that are developing along US 34 and get them to be part of the TMO. I know we all have a lot of development going along the corridor, so it'd be great to get those folks connected and part of this bigger vision too. So
yeah, if you have any partners that we can present to, if you have any groups that you're involved in, Chamber of Commerce economic development groups are really great because they are a conduit into the larger development groups, the larger companies along the corridor. So get that.
Jacqueline, maybe you could just take a second and let the communities know also what you do is like a service as far as surveys for their communities and help connect maybe opportunities for even our Van Gogh program.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. We do have a fee-for-service option if membership or sponsorship or donations are not the right fit for you. We offer fee-for-service projects. So say you have a specific project that you need help on, whether it's outreach, communications, marketing, that you just don't have staff for or don't have time for. You can hire the TMO, which is me, and I can help you implement those portions of that project that you don't have staff for. Where we really come into play is the outreach and engagement piece. We really enjoy bringing different groups together, different communities, municipalities, and jurisdictions to have that larger conversation, to bring your projects forefront that affect your community, but also affect the arterials and corridors that are moving off of that project. And Van Gogh is a fantastic program that we help push. You know, there isn't a lot of transit in the area, and Van Gogh is a great option for moving those cars off of the corridor and the arterials that affect our corridor.
Any other questions for Jacqueline? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Back to my agenda. Right, we'll go ahead. Our first action item, the 2025 tip delay review, and Jonathan's going to give us something.
Yep. All right. So the fiscal year 2025 tip project delay review. So that's an overview. It's an evaluation we do on projects with funding that has been awarded by council. This evaluation is done annually to ensure funding is being utilized in a timely manner. Funding sources that are reviewed include CMAQ, STBG, TA, MMOF, and CRP. So there will be two motions today. One for the actions TAC wants to do on the first delay projects, and one for the recommendations of Planning Council for the second and third delay projects. Note here, so after Council and NFRMPO staff discussion, we are asking communities to provide a 2-minute or less presentation at the October Planning Council meeting if their project is up for a third delay. The presentation should include why the project is delayed, how certain the project, the provided add date is, and what steps are being taken to ensure that milestone is met. We are requiring this because this is by far the most third delays that we have had, and all the projects are over $1 million in funding. Presenting remote is fine. If you can't, for whatever reason, send a representative to the council meeting, please at least send us your presentation so we have something to show. The communities that have third delays are Fort Collins, Greeley, Loveland, and Windsor. I'll go through quick. So in total, there were 26 projects up for a delay. Here are the 4 I just mentioned that are up for a third delay. There's one project that is up for a second delay, is the Mulberry Street traffic signal synchronization from Fort Collins. These are the projects that are, the 6 projects that are up for a first delay. Again, these are the ones you would take an action on today. So the Great Western Trail enhancements with Severance, US 34 Regional Mobility Hub with Greeley, 37th Street widening Phase 3 from Evans, US 34 eastbound widening construction of Loveland, William Neal Ziegler intersection improvements and trail from Fort Collins, WCR 13 and WCR 54 roundabout from Wells County. There were 11 projects that were not delayed any further. As for 4th delays, we have confirmation that the 50th Avenue and O Street roundabout went to add. Dana, I hate to put you on the spot, but I do have to ask about this US 287 intersection improvements and if that went to add.
It has not gone to add yet, but we're simply waiting for FHWA to grant concurrent staff.
Okay, how positive are we before September 30th?
Fairly positive.
Okay.
The request went in about 3 weeks ago.
Noted. Sounds good. So we're gonna keep this as not delayed, but let me know if that changes. There will be a follow-up for the tip delay with the MMOF projects once that gets, or whatever resolution we have gets approved. I'm sorry, I believe that is all for me. I will open up to any discussion.
All right, can you go over really quick the ones you're gonna need a presentation from our?
So Great Western Trail enhancements, oh, sorry, wrong one. WCR 13 alignment improvements from Windsor, CR 19 improvements from Fort Collins, US 34 widening Boise to Rocky Mountain from Loveland, and 83rd Ave roadway improvements from Greeley.
And the 2 motions we're looking for is one to adopt the one about the first delay, and then the second motion was
To recommend actions for the second and third delays.
okay. Any other questions for Jonathan? Any other questions about the projects?
What is the 83rd Avenue roadway improvements project for Greeley? Is that the 59 Street roundabout?
No, that is different. I'm not sure if anyone from Greeley online.
It looks like Victoria is.
Hi there. Let me check with our engineers on that.
It might be the widening north. I want to recall, I feel like it was the widening north or south of 34. That's all in my memory.
Okay.
It might even be the intersection.
I guess we'll find out.
I don't think it was north. I don't think it was connected to. I don't think so. I think it was the other side where the bridge was. Haven't read it in a long time.
Any other questions? All right. We are ready to take action on this one. I'll be looking for a motion. A motion for the, sorry, can you repeat that? I apologize, I asked you this.
To do whatever action you want for the first delays,
Okay,
and the second one's to recommend the second and third delays.
we'll start with the first delay, so a motion to adopt the tip delay for the projects experiencing the first delay.
A motion to approve the first delay list as presented by staff.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Right. And now we'll, the second motion will be to accept the action for to go to the planning council, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's that?
A motion to recommend the second and third delay actions as presented by staff.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, with that, we will. Thank you, Jonathan, for that. We will, On the agenda, we have the fiscal year 2026 to 2029 Transportation and Improvement Program, and there have been some real-time changes happening. So I'm going to give Elizabeth the floor for a moment.
Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and start with what we've got, at least for the TAC as part of your presentation, and then I'll add on to it.
Okay.
And real quick, I just looked up the last tip for 83rd Avenue, and it was widening from 2 to 4 lanes from 10th Street to Sheep Drop Ridge and detach sidewalk from my home.
Okay. This is an action for the fiscal year 2026 through 2029 TIP narrative and tables. This narrative provides an overview of the TIP processes and also various projects and funding information. We received feedback from stakeholders with Fort Collins, Loveland, and Greeley, and adjusted the narrative and tables accordingly. Just to go through again what has been added since the 2024 through 2027 TIP narrative. There's one new project that's being added with the new tables, which is the WCR 66 corridor. We have an updated TIP tables map, which I can actually show real quick. Maybe. Yes, so you can go here, we have our updated map, or click on the project, and maybe get information about the funding source, location, all that. There's also the updated, or just in general, updated tables and graphics, various updates based on USD DOT standards and requirements, TIP amendment and modification instructions, and TIP STIP reconciliation information. The draft tables are living, so any mods or amendments will be added as they are approved before, ideally, whenever council approves. This will be, the public comment period opened on September 5th and will close on October 6th. Tax recommendations contingent on there being no negative public comments by the end of that period. This has to be approved by Transportation Commission in November, I believe, and then so this will be up for council approval in December. I believe that is all from me. I'll open up to any discussion.
So the amendment then that we're also adding on to this request, essentially while we were driving down here, and I actually just emailed you the TIP modification.
You might need to email to Jerome because that's how I did
I can email it to Jerome.
And then
in case you want to share it.
Okay.
So that you guys can see what we're talking about. So CDOT just reached out because they have completed their final negotiations for construction package 3 for I-25 segment 5. So it's kind of a bittersweet for those of us who've been a part of this segment 5. It just feels like forever. So we're really happy for CDOT. But what essentially they're doing as a result of this negotiation is that they need to include essentially the amount of money that's coming from Wells County related to High Plains Boulevard, the 10-year plan funding, the TIFI alone. Those essentially, a lot of those funds were identified in fiscal year 25. So the TIP modification to add this to that list is to move it to fiscal year 26. So I wouldn't necessarily say it changes the funding significantly. I think there's about $1 million difference that's identified as part of the request. But the biggest difference that you would see, are you opening up Dr. Cox or ours?
This might be Dr. Cox.
Yeah. So we got Dr. Cox has to do the same thing. So we're not alone. Dr. Cox has to do a TIP modification as well. So they sent 2 spreadsheets. So we're the bottom spreadsheet. So that you can see here the funding that's identified. The bottom one in blue are the ones with the changes. The one above essentially reflects what we currently had adopted. So you can see going from fiscal year 25, which is column J, the funding is getting removed out of that column and moved over into the next column, which is fiscal year 26 primarily. So that would be the biggest change that we would ask as part of this TIP modification for TAC to also include real time as we're talking about it, so that we can include that as part of the presentation to council. The impetus and the reason for this sense of urgency is again because We don't know if the government is gonna shut down September 30th officially. So if CDOT can get this request in, then we can come back and make all of the documents aligned with it when they reopen. And this would allow them to complete that negotiation for that construction package before they shut down. And FHWA and FTA are being great partners in this request, and so we're just asking for you guys to also help support it.
Do you know if the 10-year plan has been approved?
It has not yet, no, but the funding that was identified for this project in the 10-year plan in the years it was identified has.
Oh, okay.
So it's just getting, again, it was recognized in 25, and it's getting moved to 26.
Any questions for Jonathan? All right, we'll entertain a motion for action on the 2026 through 2029. And right.
The narrative.
A motion to approve the 2026 through 2029 TIP narrative as presented by staff, including the recommended changes just outlined.
I'll say it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. We've approved that item. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you, guys. Thanks for that time, Leah. All right, and then we will move on to the MMOF funding reconciliation conversation. So I'll go ahead and introduce this topic, and I don't know if we have spreadsheets or any of the material for me to pull those up. So we presented the recommendation as we had sort of discussed, I think, at previous meetings, and at we had some conversations offline with anyone whose projects were impacted. We presented that at the Planning Council last month and had what seemed like great support from everyone. There were no concerns. I think obviously anytime we're talking about reducing funding, it's really challenging. And so that's always a hard conversation to have, but I felt like where we got as a TAC, and thanks to Dana's leadership in getting us to that point, I think the recommendation we took seemed to be fair and sort of spread across the region, and that seemed to be supported. I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but we can go through a quick high-level overview of what we landed on. I'll let Dana present.
What the spreadsheets in the packet sort of outline is that essentially there are three scenarios. The first scenario is that the NPO is taking essentially a $170,000 reduction for one of their grants that was funded through the MMF reconciliation. So that 170 reduces the total allocation that we need to reallocate. The second step is that there is outstanding STBG and CRP funding that is eligible to be granted to projects that were waitlisted. And we identified that the Taft Hill project is available to take that remaining funding. And so I don't remember the exact amounts, but you can, I think they're on the previous page of the PDF. But essentially about 260,000 total. That what that does is reduce the amount of burden to the MMOF and switches it to STBG and CRP. And so that, again, further reduces the total reallocation that's necessary. And then finally, Greeley and Fort Collins have multiple awards in these MMOF projects that are available for reallocation. Greeley volunteered one of their projects that they found was less of a prioritization than another. Same with Fort Collins, where we have one project that is a lower prioritization for us than another. And so we each gave up a project, and then using a 60-40 split, 60% of the award being given up will go to the higher prioritization project, and then 40% goes back into the MMOF fund. So again, a third way to reduce the overall allocation. So if I remember correctly, the amount that we now have to reduce the total allocation is brought down from about 2.2 to 1.2. And when you distribute that evenly across the remainder of the awards, that's where you get to this recommended scenario 3A and 3B. And so the projects that are remaining would be affected by that revised total column. And I'm happy to entertain questions. Again, this is more of a recommendation that came up from having meetings with the communities that are affected and have the MMF awards.
One thing I want to note too, some of the projects that had to be completely cut, I think for both Fort Collins and Greeley, one of the things, knowing it's hard to have to give up money that you were counting on or their plans and initiatives, and I don't know if there's a way to document sort of favor in the next round of calls for projects, but just acknowledging the fact that you all had to give back grant dollars that were awarded and were willing to do that, something that in the next calls for projects, we'd like to remember in some way. And I don't know what a way we can sort of officially document that, but I think just something to put on the record that I think is important is the transit vision and then the electric chargers for transport for the two projects that were kind of given up by the project sponsors. So I don't know if it's MMLF funds will become available in the future that those would have a higher scoring because they were of that program. And I don't know if that's the future. So we wanted to put that notion out there.
I think, well, so Victoria put in the chat that for understanding the 10th Street Vision Transit Vision Project to be waitlisted.
Okay, that was, I think that sounds like a good plan to maybe get some of the projects that I feel eliminated, waitlisted for future calls.
I defer to Joshua, but I think you want the same thing for the battery on route chargers if you could be waitlisted for that.
Any questions? It's an action item, so we'll need an action to recommend or not adoption of this for the planning commission. And it's option 3B.
3A and 3B.
3A and 3B. Any questions or any? Okay. We're ready for a motion. Recommend adoption of the 3A and 3B scenarios.
I'll move to approve the recommended scenario 3A, 3B with comments. Just appreciate Dan and all your hard work in putting all this together and just all the project sponsors and just understanding this is a hard situation to get through. Had a lot of money to kind of push away, and I think we did well in kind of building that all up. So I appreciate everyone's collaboration on that.
Appreciate Victoria's as well.
You have a second? Oh, second. Second. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. I'll move on to our discussion items. Thank you, Dana, too. I'll just close that item out by saying thank you for your leadership and everyone's willingness to work together. I felt like a really fair process. So. Right, we will move to our first discussion item is the GHG transportation report. We're going to hand it over.
All right, thank you, everybody. So we're here to provide an update on the GHG transportation report. So first, some context on this report and why we have to do it. So this is a result of the Colorado Greenhouse Gas Transportation Planning Standard. This standard was formally adopted by the Colorado Transportation Commission in 2021 And this standard states that MPOs and CDOT must demonstrate reductions in GHG emissions compared to their baseline plans. So for the North Front Range, our baseline plan will be the 2045 RTP. This applies to the NFRMPO Regional Transportation Plan and our TIP. And the GHG Transportation Report will be reviewed by the Air Quality Control Division and then ultimately approved by the Transportation Commission. So for a little bit more context, we are doing this report as a result of an amendment to the 2050 RTP that you all approved earlier today. And as part of that amendment, we included a new project on Will County Road 66, I believe. And that did trigger conformity. And when that happens, we also have to complete a new GHG transportation report. So as part of this, we also included some updates to the West Elizabeth BRT study. There were some of the stops that did move, so we incorporated that as part of this amendment as well, and that is part of this report. So for approval schedule, it is being discussed today. We'll be bringing it to Planning Council at their October 2nd meeting, and then submitting it to the APCD and CDOT/TC the following day. We will then bring it back to you for approval in November, with TC taking action the next day. So with this process, the Transportation Commission must approve before our Planning Council approves. So then final council adoption will be December 4th. So what is new in this report? Not too much, since the RTP amendment, it was not drastically different. Our strategies are not going to be drastically different than what we did for this report for the 2050 RTP. So for this, we added an additional compliance year 2029, and that is due to 2029 being the furthest year our TIP goes out. That is one of the details in this rule. This also includes an updated land use and travel model, updated roadway projects, and more specificity on some of our GHG strategies. So what things are staying the same is the baseline. Our baseline is still the 2045 RTP, and that as of adopted in 2019. The draft model runs show compliance, and well, asterisks on that. We'll discuss that a little bit later with our model runs. We are keeping the same 4 sets of GHG strategies, and we are not anticipating having to do a mitigation action plan. So our required reductions for 2025, 2030, 2040, 2050, 2029 is also including this as well. So for 2025, we will need to see a 2.4% reduction in GHG in million metric tons, I believe the NMT. 2030, we need to see an 8.1% reduction, 2040 a 9.9% reduction, and then 2050 a 9.3% reduction. So the GHG strategies that we will be doing falls into these 4 categories. The first one is active transportation, and part of that is the expansion of our local bicycle and pedestrian network and increased prevalence of e-bikes and scooters. Then for transit, we have expanded transit service of Colt, bus staying, and regional transit corridors, and then 5 additional mobility hubs and transit centers. Operations, we include arterial signal timing improvements, and then for TDM, we incorporated increased work from home since 2019, and the development of regional TDM programs by 2030 with expansion to 2050. This includes the creation of our first ever TMO. So usually with this presentation, we will come with the results, but we have had some significant modeling issues, and we are getting results that did not pass the smell test. The good news is our most recent runs are making a lot more sense, and we are very, very, very close where we need to be. We just need to make some slight adjustments. So with that being said, we're confident that we will be in compliance once we make those adjustments. We believe we have figured out what was going on with the model and what the error was, and we'll be moving forward on that. The model is actually currently running 2030 to help assist with that. But the numbers we've gotten today and yesterday are very reassuring and are the numbers you're expecting from the get-go. So once we have those numbers and we have the report, we will send it out to you all to review. And if you would like for some additional time to discuss. I'm sure we can bring it to the October TAC meeting. It will already be submitted to the AGCC and TC by then, so we might not be able to make edits, but we can come with what those results are in a little bit more detail for the October meeting if that is of interest to you all.
We still don't anticipate needing to do mitigation measures. This is the most important thing you're hearing out of all of that.
Yes, we are very, very close. It would just take a few adjustments, and I believe we can get those numbers where we need to be. It was looking a little scary for a minute, but we were able to figure out and retrace our steps and figure out what was going on. So we're going to be moving forward and getting the rest of the report complete. I will also note that we did pass conformity. And we passed, if I recall correctly, we passed that pretty easily, which is part of the reason why we felt the GHG numbers did not make sense, because if we were seeing those sort of GHG numbers, then conformity would not have passed as easily. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Jerome?
And Michaela confirmed that conformity was passed with flying colors.
Richard, quick question. What's the kind of frequency for reaching those conformity goals? Is it annual or?
So I'm not, for conformity, I'm not sure.
As far as, say your question again?
I guess just what was the frequency for requirements to pass conformity? Is it annual or is it?
Anytime you're doing an RTP update or an amendment that meets thresholds for regionally significant, so that criteria that's identified when you're doing capacity expansion on a regionally significant corridors is usually the number one, criteria that kicks us into conformity. Anytime we're doing any new plan, we have to do it. The GHG is a little bit different as far as that's a state requirement. Conformity is a federal requirement that we have to do for all of our plan updates.
I see. Okay. And so what's the frequency on the state required GHG updates? Is that also with RTP updates? And, okay. Yes. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? Keep it with Jerome, we'll move on to the SB 2530.
All right. So we can go, let's get started here. So Senate Bill 2530, its official name is Increased Transportation Mode Choice Reduced Emissions. This was a bill that had quite a bit of discussion amongst the TAC as it was going through the committee, and it has gone through significant changes and landed to where we are now. So the effective date for this bill was August 6th, 2025, and the biggest part of this bill is that it requires a transit and active transportation project inventory. This includes requirements for CDOT, NPOs, and subject local governments. And subject local governments, those are local governments with 5,000 or more population within NPOs. So for us, that is all of our communities except Garden City and LaSalle. So an overview of this inventory, this is a list of projects to address gaps in transit, bike infrastructure, and access. With this inventory, there is no financial constraint or time horizon for project delivery. This is not fiscally constrained, and any project that's in any plan, regardless of when it will happen, would be included in this. There's not any sort of cutoff date or anything of that nature. This includes projects that significantly increase transit, walking, and biking by improving connectivity and safety. It is created by the lead agency, so that's either the MPO or communities within MPO or CDOT for the rest of the state, in coordination with local governments and transit agencies. So we'll begin with the local government requirements. So as stated in the bill, by December 31st, 2025, local governments are to submit plans for transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects in any transportation, capital, or any other plan to their MPO. So this is any plan that's been adopted. That includes PEL plans, that includes any neighborhood studies, corridor studies, anything of that nature. Any plan that has been adopted by your governing body is subject to this review. This bill also outlines some optional actions. I do want to note all these actions are things that local agencies always have the authority to do. This bill is just encouraging local agencies to do these things. But it is not required. So as part of that, that is establishing transit, walking, and biking targets in collaboration with CDOT, MPOs, and transit agencies, and to submit additional local TDM strategies to their MPOs. Which both of those things are things that we have done to some degree with local agencies, whether that is through our regional performance measures, and then with TDM, we've got good working relationships with all of our member communities that do TDM efforts, and a lot of discussion of that. So these are things that we really are doing already in the region. So the MPO requirements, I pulled this directly from the bill. And for MPOs, we are required on or before July 1st, 2026, in coordination with local governments and transit agencies. We must create a transit and active transportation project inventory that identifies gaps in transit, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and access within the network of regionally significant roadways and right-of-ways that are typically subject to planning and programming by the MPO, and for which there is a reasonable expectation of user demand for these transportation modes. The inventory must identify projects that would significantly increase transit, biking, and walking by improving connectivity and safety, and must include cost estimates of such projects where available. So some additional requirements that we have for the MPO. So by October 31st, 2026, CDOT and MPOs, we must provide a report on our inventories to the Transportation Legislative Review Committee. And then in the future, we are required to use these inventories to inform regional and statewide transportation plans, transportation improvement programs, and transit service plans. And then we must update our inventories as part of our planning processes for our regional transportation plan. So we will be redoing this process when we go to complete the 2055 RTP in a year or so. So I will go into more detail a little bit later. I do have our spreadsheet that I'll be sending out to you all later this week that has some of this information. So some key points for this inventory. This is a gap inventory of needs. There is no ranking or prioritization of inventory projects that are required for this. There also does not need to be any project screening. Any screening will be done during a call for projects process or any other process for project selection for grant funds. For this inventory, we do ask to include project specifics when available, but it is okay to have more generic and broad project concepts if you do not have those details. And then we have some information on what qualifies as a project in a plan. So that does include projects specified in the plan, but does not include projects that are consistent with the plan. So it does have to be specifically named within the plan, but as part of this, we will accept projects where there's a bike ped element to the project, even if it is not a bike ped project overall. So please do include bike ped elements of larger transportation projects, and when doing that, be sure for any detail you give, it's only for the bike ped portion of that. So project types. So this was determined by CDOT in coordination with MPO staff. We have been meeting with CDOT 3 or 4 times to discuss this inventory and coordinate so that we all come in as a unified effort and do the same process for simplicity when we report it back to TLRC. So for this, there are 4 major project types. So for walkability, those projects include any sidewalk project, any shared street or street pedestrianization projects, and any ADA accessible infrastructure. For bikeability, that includes any on or off-street facility, and this does include amenities, so bike parking, fix-it stations, things of that nature. So for multimodal projects, that includes at-grade crossing improvements, bike ped overpasses and underpasses, shared micromobility programs, any sort of traffic calming or roadway reallocation programs, first, last mile connection programming or improvements, and then a broader category for other / unspecified multimodal improvements. And then for transit, that is any project that would provide a new service, whether that's fixed route or on demand, extended service routes or service areas, again, fixed route or on demand, service enhancements, so that can be increased frequency, expanded hours, things of that nature. Any sort of transit facility, so stops or station improvements, and then a broader other category. So when you are filling out this inventory, if there are any questions, what could qualify as other? Am I not sharing? I'm not sharing, am I?
You are.
Oh, I am. There's
That's the meeting.
I got
That's
confused. Okay, I was like,
It's okay.
okay. So if there are any questions, what falls under other and specified, or if there are any projects that you're not sure if need to be included in the inventory, reach out to me. We can schedule time to meet and have a discussion and see what makes sense for this inventory. Next slide. So ineligible project types. So for this, we are not including transit operations and maintenance of existing routes and services, wayfinding projects, active education or encouragement programs, multimodal or transit plans, data collection or count programs. So our approach for this, eligible projects, that will be on any of our regionally significant corridors. That includes our regional active transportation corridors and our regional transit corridors. For our regional active transportation corridors, while we have not adopted the active transportation plan, by the time we submit this to the TLRC, it will be adopted. So you can include projects for RTC number 13 or the number 8 extension and any other major alignment changes. I will send out a map with those alignment changes as part of that. If there are any questions for RTCs, please reach out and we can discuss whether or not it is appropriate for this inventory. All right, so now I will very quickly go through some of the materials I will send out.
Let me skip this question.
Yeah.
The purpose in doing this is this is a kind of a new exercise that because of CDOT's active transportation plan, is that the why, or just curious about the?
That's a wonderful question. So the original bill had a lot more to it. It would have required local agencies to complete a mode choice plan as well as the NPOs, and it got watered down significantly to this. So the intended purpose, I'm not 100% sure. My educated guess is to inform the TLRC. So once we submit this to the TLRC, it is up to them to determine what to do with it. They may determine that we need more bike funding and transit funding and may find a solution, or they may look at it and say, move on with their day. So ultimately, it's up to the TLRC and what they do with it. So the purpose is to inform the TLRC. That's my best bet.
Thank you for your candor.
Alright, well, we're for that. Right.
Right.
You said it, Tommy. So this is some key terms that were identified by CDOT and our NPO partners. This is attached to a letter, because for CDOT, they'll be sending out physical letters to member communities. We will be doing it by email, but I will be setting these key terms that can help answer any questions and make sure that we are all using the same terms and using the same things as we submit our projects. So, for example, it defines what counts as an active transportation or transit gap. So for this is not just physical gaps, that includes any connectivity gaps or functional gaps. That is rather broad, so it does allow for quite a few projects.
I'd argue that there aren't any projects that don't fit that category.
Yeah, so I'm curious how that's going to shake out as we do the inventories. That's part of the reason why I want to get this out early so that we can work out any bumps along the road. We are the first MPO to submit this because we were positioned, we're in a better position to start this since we do everything quarter-based anyway, and our TPR and MPO boundaries are the same. The other MPOs do not have that luxury, so they need a little bit more time to figure out some details. So we are the guinea pigs for this. So they define what is a project, and as part of that, they give examples on what is a broadly defined project and versus more narrowly defined. They do note for this, we are allowed for project grouping. So this could be, for example, from the ADA improvements. Instead of them to list every single improvement, you can group them all together and say, for example, 121 ADA curb ramps in X municipality, 200 miles of new sidewalk in X municipality. This is help simplify so we don't get spreadsheets that are thousands of inputs long. They add some information on planned projects, regional network. Before I send this out, I will put in writing what that network is. That is just our already adopted region significant corridors, RETCs, and our transit corridors. There's some information on CDOT eligible network, and that is mostly for CDOT. So for any project that is on a CDOT facility, please do still submit that to me. After the submittal date next spring, I will meet with CDOT staff and we will flesh out what list that project belongs on, but we will do that after we do the submission. So for simplicity's sake, just submit all projects to me. Unless you're one of the counties, then the non-NPO portions of the counties will go to CDOT or maybe Dr. Cog if you're Will County. That depends on the boundary. So this has some more information on project types are included in the inventory. There's a note for bicycle facilities that they should meet design standards given the roadway type and land use context, and then some additional information on that. So for this inventory, we'll get more to that when we get into the spreadsheet. I think it'll be easier to see. And then it provides more information on what attributes to provide. So then, this is what the spreadsheet looks like. And I did put in, and I know that's hard to read. Let me try this in here. I did put in 2 projects to use an example. So the first, for this, if it is in green, it is required. That's information we absolutely need to have. If it's in yellow, that is optional. That's dependent on if you have that information or not. So first is project name, pretty self-explanatory. Primary project type. So for this, there is a drop down, and that drop down includes all of the project types that I presented on in the PowerPoint. There is a column for secondary project type, and that is for projects that could fit in 2 categories. So if that is your project, then you can submit that second project type here. And if you somehow have a project that is more than 2, reach out and we will discuss how to implement that. So then we have project location. So for this, we do request to include termini and or cross streets if known. If not, you can just provide the general area. So for example, this first project is the Poudre River Trail, Regional Trail, Windsor to 10th connection. I pulled this from our tip. And for project location, I put Poudre River Trail, current eastern terminus in Timnit to the western terminus in Windsor. And then for this second project, that is the Windsor to Loveland corridor that was identified in our land NOCO study. And for that, I gave a more general alignment. So then, if applicable, and if you know it, please include latitude and longitude, project length, if applicable, to the nearest 1/4 of a mile. And I did not follow that instruction, so do better than me for that. So regional corridors impacted, if it is different from the project location. So for this first one, since it says Poudre Trail in the name, you don't necessarily need to note that it's on the Poudre Trail. Feel free to if you'd like. But for the second one, since it was not explicitly named, I did note that that is RTC number 3, which is that full alignment. Cost estimate if available. We do recognize that there are some projects that will not have a cost estimate, especially if it is in your plan for 2040, 2050, further out. So if there are no cost estimate, that's fine, but if you do have a cost estimate, please do provide that. And then the year of that cost estimate as well. We then have secured funding status, and that is another drop down. So the options are fully funded, partially funded, and not funded. And then if there's funding secured, do provide the total amount and sources of secured funding. For this, for any local, if it's being funded through local dollars, you do not necessarily need into details of those local dollars. You can just put X amount in local funds. But any grants that you do have, please do list that on here. Plans containing the project, very self-explanatory. Please do include every plan it is in. I know that is tedious. That is why we're giving you, I'm not going to do math, months to do it. Because this can get rather tedious, especially for communities that have a lot of plans to go through. We then have a brief project description. So that we request it's only about 1 to 4 sentences. And for projects where it's a large transportation project, but you are reporting the bike ped element, do note that in the project description, but mostly describe the bike ped element of it. We don't necessarily need to know the details of the rest of the project. But if you'd like to provide that detail, that can be provided here in the comments, which is just a generic place where you place any comments or additional information that does not fall in any of the other categories. And then in here, we'll have some more information, and I will be sure this is filled out with the MPO specific information before I send it out later this week. All right, with that, are there any questions?
I have one really annoying question, and I'm just saying, not taking a question that's a fine answer, but I'm just thinking about all of us submitting this data. Have you thought of, did you guys contemplate maybe using GIS or a tool that gave you, what I'm worried about is if CDOT does all the sidewalk apps, we do all the sidewalk apps, Lamar County does all the sidewalk apps, that, you know, there's enough overlap that I'm wondering if a mapping tool for this would be a good way to visualize where these projects are. And I recognize that there's a lot of people contributing to this, and you've probably thought very hard about how you're going to take that data. I also just know that's how a lot of our data is stored, and so that might be the easiest way for us to share that information with you. So,
yeah, so you're asking to map it after it is submitted,
or allow it, putting a map together if we can submit shapefiles or submit, you know, GIS data to you to, I don't know if that would be a good way to sort of gather.
That isn't already in our plan, kind of thing?
Yeah,
So
like
where they
our
don't have
sidewalk
to take the
apps.
attribute table out of our model right now based on your project, because again, it's corridor based, which is a blessing in this sense because it isn't project specific, but at the same time, because it's not project specific, we have to rely on our communities to provide the project specificity.
Yeah. Well, and just so, I mean, we overlap area in Loveland and Lamar County, and we probably have similar gaps sort of noted in our GMA that's in your, so if you're gonna get contributions from all of these different agencies, it'd be nice in GIS to use a tool to make sure you're not duplicating those projects.
Oh, that's something we can do.
And if it's hard and complicated, I just thought that that might.
Yeah, we can look into doing that. I would say still submit it within the spreadsheet. So like for sidewalks, that can be X amount of sidewalks within the city. And that just so that I have the details, including if there's any funding tied to it or cost estimates. And those maps could be useful to first see where it's at, and I can go in and look at the edges and make sure that's not duplicative. So we can look into doing that.
But that's down the way, so that might be.
But we can, I'm not sure how that would look, but I can dig and see if that's doable and report back in October.
And Jerome, I had a similar thought to Nicole on that. Improved concurrency of seeing that, and that may require people to have a login, sort of their in your system. If that's not possible, another way you could do it, if you have it geospatially, is like in the table you give to Jerome, include an object ID maybe, and just send that data over. And for folks that don't have it, like a KMZ might help more than that long. That's so much data to collect.
That's what I was thinking, it's hard to, no one's gonna go through every entry and make sure it's not.
I was hoping you'd go back to your elected officials and tell them how burdensome this is, so that maybe they'd want to amend the bill. No? No? Okay.
Yes.
I'm 100% for it.
I approve that action.
I just think it's
Emotion.
important that, I think it's important you're communicating the impact that these bills have down onto us, right? And that your elected officials understand how it, it sounds great when you're looking at this holistically, like, yeah, why do we not have this? Why wouldn't we have this? But we don't have it in this format, and so it makes our lives very difficult in the sense of how much time we have to spend to collect it collectively as a group.
When we do these exercises, but we don't know the so what of it, where is this list gonna be used? Is this gonna be used to determine, are these the projects that are gonna be eligible for future funding? Like, those are the types of questions where it's like, why are we doing this? If we don't have a clear why, these things sometimes they pop up later and.
Right, and I think Jerome was spot on that it was intended originally to be its own kind of plan. And because of some of the maybe stakeholder pushback on that, it got, I don't want to say watered down, but it got turned into a study that is just called an inventory. That's essentially, you're taking what they said was going to be a plan, which would have been even more burdensome probably on us, to just an inventory. And they felt like then that could maybe be the first step of what they would need to create what I'm guessing would be a bill this next session. But I don't know for sure, right? But the outcome is this inventory is supposed to be presented on behalf of all the NPOs to the TLRC. What was the timeline again?
I believe that was by October 31st, 2026.
26, so.
Is that something that could just be brought up to the planning commission for them to also just be aware of, like how much effort is being requested from each community, and so that maybe they can help too with that? And then if we're gonna collect data, like, can we make it in a format that are like GIS? Is there a way to make it so that way when we do future exercises, which we've been heading towards GIS for some time, that maybe it could be useful? Some of us who don't have GIS departments find this difficult.
I mean, I think fundamentally, our model is essentially the list, right? And then I mean, ideally, pulling out our attribute table to see if we can get it to fit into this format and have you guys review what projects we don't have on the list, in my mind, is kind of the starting point. But CDOT, I think, has put together this spreadsheet in the format that they're asking for it based on how they're interpreting the bill. And so that's what Jerome's working with there.
And with I feel like we sat down and just did this exercise for the regional active transportation plan update. We don't have necessarily every project for every sidewalk gap or every specific listed in there, but it's one that we keep giving this information over and over again in different ways. And I wonder if at some point we find like a GIS or a tool that we can use to help communicate these things. So we aren't having to go back to the drawing board each time.
I would say, with the active transportation plan, one of the recommendations coming out of it is to improve our data sharing capabilities so we can keep up with those sidewalks and things like that, and use GIS, particularly GIS online, use that a little bit more so it's more useful for our member communities, and we can update the maps more frequently. That's kind of conversations we've already been having. I will also note for this that many of these projects we might not have on our model or have because I had a train of thought.
Well, like the data, like we might not have the specific data. So we might have we'll have a regional corridor. So we might have something along, let's say, County Road 74 is a regionally significant corridor, but we might not have the project specific if it's on-street bike lanes, off-street bike lanes, and how many miles or feet are associated with those projects, right? So unless it's in the tip, that's probably as specific as we have. And so, but maybe what we can do, maybe Jerome and Steve, we can sit down and brainstorm if we can pull out some of that attribute and then give it to the communities to let them specify in those corridors fitting that format. Maybe, well, let us regroup and think about this to help you guys out, because I do know this is a heavy lift.
Was there any indication of what non-compliance look like?
So, great question.
That's the best question, right?
So, there is no sort of punishment
There's
for
no
local
stick.
communities if they do not submit it or.
There's no carrot or stick.
So when we asked CDOT, their response was the punishment is that your projects are not on the inventory, so TRC would not be aware of them. And that would lower the amount of our need, which if they decide, we need to do something about this, it might make it less impactful. So when we met with CDOT and other NPOs, we're kind of hoping this will be a way to show the legislature that we desperately need more money for active transportation and transit projects. Seeing their current budget situation, I'm not holding my breath for anything coming soon, but this could be 5-10 years from now, who knows?
Well, and I'm just wondering then, like, if this is showing the need, they looked at MMOF and said, oh, you don't actually need that anymore, like, so this.
From the
would be-
legislator perspective, they would
Yeah.
be figuring out how to get it back, right?
Yeah.
So great questions. I can't say I'm looking forward to this either. CDOT, none of us really, this is the first time any of us are doing it. So there'll be a lot of lessons learned for when we have to do this again for the 2055 RTP.
And who is managing this is it CDOT headquarters?
Yes, CDOT headquarters. I believe it'll be headquarters, be one reaching out to the TPRs. At least I think that's what their plan is.
Would there ever be a chance to get them to come and talk about this and what they're, I mean, just to, I don't know if that would be a worthwhile agenda item for us to have in the future. Parking lot that if it's not helpful, but whoever's managing it,
I can reach out and see if that's possible.
Maybe wait till we have more questions.
I just can't stress enough, guys, when these bills are going through the legislature, the importance of trying to connect with your elected officials to help them understand the impacts that it can have on you. I know it's hard to keep up with those when they're doing, hundreds of bills in a legislative session, but I mean, I think Jerome does a good job of trying to identify the bills that are impacting our organization, especially as we're going through council meetings. So if you have questions as we're going through that effort, that's when we want to be talking and communicating. And like I said, there isn't any reason why maybe you can't see if your elected officials could help get an amendment, get an amended bill to this one, addressing this and what we're trying to accomplish, with the understanding of what it is, what it means to you guys, because maybe it is better to look at it from a GIS perspective than a spreadsheet perspective, right? And that's not how it's set up right now.
So the spreadsheet is coming from the state, not the NPO.
Correct.
Yes, we got it from the state. We didn't have to use it that way, but we also got very little time to figure this out because the bill was signed in May. We began meeting a few months ago, and as we met, we kept on finding, I wouldn't say issues, but complications with some of the language in the bill. Like one complication was what boundaries do the NPOs use? We don't have that problem, but like Dr. Cog has their NPO boundary and then their planning boundary. And the TPR boundary. So there's questions on who's responsible for what, how would that work. The bill also allows for various optional things. Like an option we could have allowed for, which we chose not to, was to allow for you all to submit any project, even if it's not in a plan. We felt that'd be too chaotic to allow for that. But this bill was rather vague in many ways, which can be difficult to implement, especially since we've had till the end of the year for the first part of it. Might not have been enough time. It's looking like that might not be enough time, but that's what we have to work with until there's an amendment or we're told not to.
So in regards to an amendment, if we're going to try to push for something like that, we should be consistent throughout the region here. So is there a vision for what an amendment would look like?
Well, I was just spitballing. You don't have to do an amendment.
I don't like doing for the sake of doing it. Like have a purpose for this, have an outcome. If we had some sort of shared, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a collective state vision of all of our needs. Like that's appropriate for them to understand.
Or repository that the state manages.
yeah, but what I don't think is always necessary is communities do a lot of planning, and I don't know that the state needs to duplicate all of those efforts, and I guess this is one of those things where I wonder if the duplicative nature, is there an easier way we could talk about our need without going through the exercise of, that would be my idea of an amendment is what are we trying, maybe some way to document the greater need rather than having a duplicative planning process or.
Maybe Jerome, you can, I don't know when you have another meeting with the state, but maybe ask them about mapping and what, let them know that TAC wanted to inquire more about if we could meet the same intent through GIS mapping, that the TLRC would be expecting with the bill, versus this spreadsheet, see what they say.
And it might not for some of our communities make sense, I just think about like, the end, are we gonna have a list that's outdated by the time it's compiled, like, and then what are we gonna do with that list? I just wonder if we have something we could keep updating or, you know.
My guess is they want a dollar amount, but they don't want a vetted dollar amount. If we get it, just tell them that we're doing an estimate anyway. So I think it's more of a high level, if you collectively add these all together, what would it add up to? And we already know the answer is gonna be a lot, so.
Yeah, more money than we have, and there's other needs.
But maybe they need that picture or that spreadsheet to justify it, like you guys are saying.
Thank you. Any more questions for everyone? Thoughts, feelings? Go ahead and write them all out. Welcome. Thank you for walking through that. We will move on to our outside partner reports. In your packet, you'll find the NOCO by Consent Collaborative report. And then I don't know if we have any of our transit agencies that want to give an update. Here, we're gonna start.
Yeah, we're undergoing right now. For transport's undergoing a system optimization study. We're looking to right-size our system as operational costs have outpaced our revenues. Just budget concerns, as everyone knows. So yeah, that's a big project that's underway for us. I did plug myself into the regional transportation meetings. Wasn't aware that I was responsible for this update until recently, so I'll hopefully have more updates in the future.
I don't know if we have anyone else in Phoenix is online or anyone else. Thank you. Thanks for that. We'll go ahead and do, I'll just mention really quick for Colt and transport and all of our regional friends. We've been working on some changes to the flex route together in a collaborative effort. Again, operational costs outpacing, and Loveland sort of had a preemptive budget issue last year that we had to reduce some of our operating dollars, and so we're having to modify what some of that service is looking like. And so some of the routes that go all the way from downtown Fort Collins to Boulder have been eliminated, and then we're replacing that with some direct service operated by Colt to the South Transit Center in Fort Collins. So it'll be just that local service between Loveland and Fort Collins. It's a really challenging, especially for, I know a lot of people here have been part of, building flex over the years. It's sad to see these changes come and sad to reduce that service, but we've done a lot of outreach. I think we're trying to offer the most amount of service with the dollars we have, and just appreciate Fort Collins' leadership through this as we're going through those changes. So, update for both. All right, and we can move on to mobility updates.
So we've just been busy doing a lot of engagement in our communities and with our partners, providing a lot of resources, as well as education about all of the mobility and transportation options in the region. This past weekend, we were at Evans Heritage Days. This next weekend, we'll be at the Loveland Farmers Market. Our team has created a new writer's guide, and we're also finishing up a really robust provider's guide. So lots of new marketing materials out there, and just plugging along, but really getting out there in the community and letting them know what's available in the transportation world.
And the September Planning Council meeting summary is in your packet, along with the Mobility Committee updates and the NPO air quality program updates. And we are going off our roundtable. Start with you.
We are wrapping up our safety action plan, going into our final safety task force meeting and meeting with our board county commissioners again for a third time on both of those. So just wrapping up things on that and looking to adopt the plan next month. So that'll be real nice, and we'll make sure everybody in this group has a copy of the plan on that. So, I think.
Anyone down here?
Our transportation master plan is going to our planning commission tonight for final adoption.
How did the first round of, I know you had to make some changes right before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we had presented to our board of county commissioners. They approved it and recommended adoption to the planning commission. In between our board of county commissioner meeting and our planning commission meeting, we received a letter from the U.S. Attorney General about removing all the DEI language. So we had gone through the plan, removed the language, included that it did not change any of our projects or prioritization or anything. So we went to planning commission, and they did not approve it. So they.
Because you took that out?
Yeah. So we had to go back to our board of county commissioners, get them to look at the actual changes, and now tonight we'll be moving back to planning commission. Hopefully there'll be a little.
How do you get on the U.S. Attorney? How do you get on their radar? How'd you manage that,
It
Aaron?
went to everybody.
All of us.
Oh, it did. Everybody got a letter.
Yeah.
You just read your email.
Any other transportation plans affected besides
So I mean
besides our UPWP?
with your SS4A plan.
Yeah, with safety action plan, I mean, we do that. So, made note of that.
Yeah. So, and it's not just the transportation problem; it's everything. So our HR department is having to go through and cut a bunch of stuff. We had a equity, diversion, and inclusivity board in Farmer County that's getting cut. So yeah, that memo has some work associated with it, but we're hopeful tonight we'll get this approved. And in preparation, the plan is referenced in our proposed 0.15% sales tax. It'll be on the ballot in November, so we have to get this thing approved.
Yeah.
So,
They provide a list of words that you could specifically use in that email. Where they kind of use.
it wasn't a specific list, it was referencing anything DEI. I think there is a list out there that's kind of the hot topic list for people to look through, but it trickled down through our consultant. They were looking at their own website, making sure that they didn't have anything on their website that might flag and come back to their clients. So, yeah,
We did have to change some words.
When I was presented at the CDOT Traffic Safety Summit earlier this summer, they sent us a list, I think culture, say that word. So, yeah, it's pretty exhaustive, so.
Becky may have a list. I know they talked about it statewide NPO at least once. And equally the tip narrative also went through that where we got rid of a lot of phrases and words. Yeah, so I'll reach out to Becky. If anyone.
So if any of you have federally funded plans in progress, just keep that in mind.
Good luck. Let us know how it goes.
Planning updates, our strategic trails plan was adopted earlier this summer. And before the letter, thank you. On construction side, Power Trail in Harmony was re-advertised, which is an underpass for the Power Trail, which is a regionally significant corridor on, I forget what that one's specifically called.
Number 7, Front Range Trail.
Thank you. And construction will begin in November of this year. And the siphon overpass, which is currently in construction, we're waiting for an opportunity to de-energize the PRPA line that is immediately adjacent to that. The swing that was in place will happen in early November to open the Mayo Creek Trail connection to Power Trail. That's it.
I'm so excited to see you guys in person. I'm glad that the CDOT had this fire drill that I could come and say hi to you guys instead of just virtually. Some of the things that we've been talking about as a group is like simple things like maybe not using GoToMeeting anymore. Just some minor modifications of, you know, a lot of us use Teams and other platforms, and I know that this has been a platform that the NFPO has used since COVID.
Do you need a motion for that?
I appreciate the support in that. If there's other things that have been driving you crazy, this would, you know, let us know, reach out. We're open to hearing and making any suggestions that we can to make your lives easier. We are working on a lot of different plans. I know you didn't mention the 2025 coordinated plan, but maybe you want to warn everybody. It's going to be coming out for.
Oh yeah, I'll be sending out to you guys just to review the draft and comments or edits, but probably next week or two.
Be on the lookout. Appreciate staff's hard work and everything they do, but if you guys have questions and want to get together, just give me a call.
We are going to be having an RFP for our safety action plan, which was already stripped of all of that language, so we will not have that in our scope. So that should be coming next bit, so we're finding out our contract group, so that's nice. Year and a half.
No updates for me?
I'm so sleepy. Anyone online have any updates? I'll give an update for Loveland. We're also about to set, we're probably on the same schedule with our safety action plan update, and I went through the review with the HWA, and we're getting ready to submit that RFP. I don't know, timeline wise.
Hopefully the 29th.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone have any suggestions for our next month's topics? All right, think one later. You know, we meet after the planning commission is up. With that, thank you all so much.